All right, so let's jump into this deep dive into Trump's executive order on digital assets. Really ambitious stuff, aiming for the U.S. to become like the crypto capital of the planet. Big vision, and today we'll really try to break down, how it all might play out, especially for you.
Yeah, it's a big move. Impacts way beyond Bitcoin, honestly. We're talking a new presidential working group, a national stockpile of digital assets, even targets CBDCs and reverses some Biden-era crypto policies.
Okay, so let's get into the details. First, this presidential working group is not just any committee. We're talking serious players. David Sachs, the White House AI and crypto czar. We've got the Secretary of the Treasury. Oh, and the SEC chairman, too.
Yeah, and the thing is, they've got like a really tight deadline, 180 days to come up with a whole federal regulatory framework for digital assets.
Yeah.
That's going to create tension, guarantee, especially with other potential conflicts of interest in that group.
Feels like a pressure tactic, right? Trump wants to see results, and fast. But with so much on the line, I do wonder if rushing things could backfire.
Definitely a valid concern. I mean, this group's decisions will have a ripple effect on the entire crypto world. Getting it right is crucial.
For sure. Now let's talk about this national digital asset stockpile. The U.S. potentially hoarding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Bold move? No. Seems like they're taking a page from history, nations stockpiling gold or oil, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And it brings up some interesting questions. Are we entering a new era where digital assets are like strategic reserves? How does that even work in the digital age? It's unprecedented.
Totally uncharted territory.
Yeah.
And speaking of shaking things up, the executive order also bans central bank digital currencies, CBDCs for short. It's a pretty stark contrast to what a lot of other countries are doing.
Yeah, this ban is a signal. Trump sees a fundamental difference between government-controlled digital currencies and decentralized cryptocurrencies like, Bitcoin. It's a big vote of confidence for free market solutions over centralized control.
So is this a total reversal of the Biden administration's crypto policies?
Well, not a complete 180. But it does specifically revoke Executive Order 14067, the one aimed at setting up a framework for responsible digital asset development. Also overturns the Treasury Department's framework for international engagement on digital assets.
So Trump's targeting specific policies he doesn't like, not just hitting reset on all crypto regulations. What are the potential consequences of these reversals, though? What does this mean for the future of crypto in the U.S.?
Still early to say for sure. We'll have to see how the new regulatory landscape shapes up, and of course how the market reacts.
Right. Speaking of, did we see any immediate market impact after the order was announced? Any notable price surges or statements from industry leaders?
There were some initial, ripples, but the crypto market is, as always, volatile. Too early to say what the long-term impact will be. I'll be watching the trends closely to see how things unfold.
Yeah, definitely feels like the race has officially begun. Let's circle back to Trump's campaign promise, making the U.S. the crypto capital. Is that realistic or just campaign talk?
Well, the U.S. definitely has advantages. A strong tech sector, well-developed financial markets, history of innovation, But there are also big hurdles. Regulatory uncertainty, lack of public understanding about cryptocurrencies.
So how does this executive order fit into that ambition? What role could it play in achieving that crypto capital goal?
Well, potentially, it could clarify regulations, create a more favorable environment for crypto businesses, which could then attract investment talent to the U.S. It's a step towards a framework that could, in theory, foster growth in the industry.
Okay, and what about the impact of this national digital asset stockpile? How does that factor into the equation?
Well, people who support the stockpile, they argue, it could be a hedge against global instability, strengthens the U.S. position in international trade, basically leveraging digital assets to potentially boost economic power and influence.
Sounds a little like a digital arms race. Nations competing to hoard the most powerful digital assets. Is that sustainable or even ethical?
That's the key question, isn't it? There's a risk this could make global inequalities worse, create new vulnerabilities. Policymakers need to really think about the potential downsides, not just the benefits.
Yeah, high stakes, and the consequences could be huge. This isn't just about the U.S., it's about the entire global financial landscape, the future of finance itself.
Absolutely. The decisions made now, they'll echo for years. And it's not just governments and corporations, it's about everyday people, too.
It's a good reminder. This is bigger than just technology. It's about power, control, the nature of money in the digital age. We need to remember that as we delve deeper into all of this.
I agree.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a tricky situation, isn't it? Like, we're seeing this clash between traditional finance and this new digital world, and the rule book's still being written as we go.
Makes you wonder if this executive order is like kicking off a global shift or just another move in a bigger, geopolitical game.
Probably a bit of both, honestly. Other countries are watching for sure, seeing how this plays out. Some might follow suit, embrace crypto, and maybe even challenge the dollar's dominance.
But wouldn't some see it as a threat? The U.S. potentially controlling a big chunk of the global Bitcoin supply. That's pretty intense.
It could definitely lead to more tension, yeah. Imagine nations using their crypto reserves to, like, mess with markets, currencies, even impose sanctions.
Sounds a bit dystopian, to be honest.
Yeah.
And ethically, is the potential economic gain worth the risk of weaponizing digital assets?
That's the question, right? We can't ignore the potential for misuse. The consequences could be huge. We need policymakers, industry leaders, the public, everyone really, to have serious conversations about this.
Okay, so we've talked about the global impact, but let's zoom back in on the U.S. Who benefits from this order domestically, and who might lose out?
One of the big arguments for the order is that it'll boost innovation and economic growth in the U.S. By creating a clearer regulatory framework, the hope is to attract investment, create jobs in the crypto industry.
But is there a risk that this comes at the expense of consumer protection? I mean, sometimes rushing into innovation means cutting corners on safeguarding people from fraud and abuse.
Definitely a valid concern. It's a balancing act. Policymakers have to be careful. The goal should be a healthy crypto ecosystem, but also making sure consumers are protected.
It's like we're always on this tightrope between innovation and exploitation. How do we find that balance where we get the benefits without taking on too much risk?
It's tough, no easy answer. But open dialogue, debate, and a willingness to learn and adapt are key.
So besides watching the presidential working group, what else should our listeners keep an eye on?
Watch the market reaction. How are investors responding to the order? More interest in investment or hesitation because of the uncertainty?
It's like gauging the industry's confidence, right? If investors are confident, maybe that means they believe in Trump's crypto vision.
Exactly. But if there's lots of volatility, uncertainty, that could be a sign people are nervous about the long-term consequences.
And we can't forget the global context. Other countries are developing their own approaches to crypto. Some are even experimenting with their own CBDCs, which, of course, this order directly opposes.
It's a complex game. Players making moves and counter-moves globally. Understanding how these national strategies interact is key to seeing the bigger picture.
It's like we're seeing a new world order emerging, one where digital assets are at the center. And it's up to all of us to try and make sense of it all, understand the potential, the risks, and shape the future in a way that reflects our values.
It's a big challenge, but also exciting. We're at a pivotal moment. The choices we make now will have huge consequences.
So what can our listeners do to be more informed, more engaged in this conversation? There's so much information out there, it's hard to know where to begin.
Start with curiosity. Ask questions, do your research. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
And remember, this isn't just about the tech. It's about people, the impact on our lives, societies, our future. Before we started this deep dive, I had this idea of crypto as like this fringe thing, of something for like techies and gamblers.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's clear it's woven into everything, whether we get it or not.
Yeah, it's a huge shift away from the old ways of centralized control into, well, uncharted territory. And like any exploration into the unknown, there's excitement, but also some, apprehension.
For sure. It's like we're on the edge of something totally new, a digital renaissance maybe. But where does it lead? Greater freedom and opportunity, or new forms of inequality and control?
The answer really depends on the choices we make as a society. Do we use this tech responsibly, or do we let it, run wild?
So many possibilities, both good and bad. It's almost like too much to think about. But I keep coming back to this idea of power shifting, away from institutions and into the hands of individuals. Is that really what's happening here?
It's definitely one of the biggest implications of this move towards decentralization. It could empower people to control their own finances in ways we've never seen before.
But you know what they say? With great power comes great responsibility. What if people aren't ready for that freedom? What if they get scammed or make bad investments?
Those are valid concerns. It underscores the need for education, financial literacy. People need to understand the risks and rewards before jumping in.
Feels like a new Wild West, a digital frontier, where the rules are still being written and fortunes are made and lost in an instant.
And just like the old Wild West, there will be those trying to, game the system. That's why strong regulations are so important, to protect consumers, ensure things are fair.
So where do we go from here? How do we navigate this new territory responsibly, ethically?
Well, first, stay informed. Pay attention to what's happening, the changes, the trends. Knowledge is power. The more we understand, the better decisions we can make.
Right. And don't be afraid to, ask questions, challenge the status quo,
Yeah.
demand transparency and accountability from, the people in charge.
Absolutely. This isn't just about tech. It's about our values, the world we want to build. We need to be active in shaping this future, not just watching it happen.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a call to action. Embrace the potential, but be cautious. Be aware. Educate yourselves. Have those tough conversations. Demand a future where digital assets are used for good, to empower people.
Yeah.
Create a more just and equitable world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The future of finance is being written right now, and we all have a part to play.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.